for your first-time home buyers. So we are excited to say that BMO is our sponsor for today. And we have one of our great partners, Caesar Pulido, who will be doing a presentation a little later. But let me tell you a little bit about Caesar. He's a service-oriented mortgage lender with an expansive experience helping clients navigate home financing. I can validate that personally. He is one of our stronger lender partners. He specializes in guiding first-time and repeat buyers with refinancing strategies and tailored mortgage solutions. With deep knowledge of local markets and access to competitive loan options, Caesar is committed to helping clients achieve their home ownership goals with confidence. And again, we only put people in front of you that we know actually do the work, and Caesar is one of those partners. So we want to thank BMO. We also have Ashley Garner, known as the home buyer strategist. And this is a full circle moment because Ashley and I met on a stage a number of years ago, and just so proud of all the work she's done since our initial introduction. But she is a real estate professional with over a decade of experience helping clients achieve home ownership, often with minimal out-of-pocket costs. She specializes in strategic planning, financial coaching, and post-purchase support. And we'll dig into it deeper, but we all know it's one thing to get a house, but it's a whole nother strategy to keep in a home. So we appreciate the work she does, not only in being a first-time home buyer advocate, but a post-purchase advocate as well. And is the author of Smart Move series for home buyers, which we actually use in our curriculum for our first-time home buyers. As CEO of UNI Housing Foundation, Ashley leads initiatives to expand access to affordable housing and has been recognized for her work to increase Black home ownership in California. So thank you, Ashley, for being here. And then completing our panel discussion today is Rhea Cotton. Rhea Cotton Landry is a California-based real estate broker offering residential and commercial services, home loans, and property management. With nearly 2 decades of experience, she is known for delivering practical, empowering real estate education. And again, we only put people in front of you that we have seen in action and want to attest, and we'll learn a little bit more about Rhea's work, adding property management to her platform where the education becomes key. Rhea serves as a region vice president with the National Association of Real Estate Brokers and national second vice president of its Women's Council, advancing equitable home ownership nationwide. She is also an award-winning entrepreneur, wife, and a proud mother of a large but beautiful blended family. So I want to welcome everyone. Please take a look at the landing pages as we put them up. As we've introduced folks, you have their contact information by being able to scan. We can also put them in the chat, so if you want it for a later reference. So that is who's going to be spending time with you today. And so I would like to bring Caesar to the front and giving him an opportunity to get his presentation up and running, to share a little bit about BMO's products, services, and how he's best engaged with realtors. So Caesar, when you are ready, you can go ahead and get your slide presentation and take it away. Actually, Caesar, before we do that, we do have a question in chat and just wanted to highlight some things from your presentation. So this is
Sure.
again why we do mornings with RNHS, because we understand as a realtor, you won't have the ability to know all these things or even remember all of the different options. And as a HUD counseling agency, we're required to always put a few options in front of a borrower for them to make a decision. So we also encourage you to get very familiar with what other institutions are doing, because the one that you may have the best working relationship with may not be the one to get your client over the finish line because of what it is they, do or don't offer. Because I counted close to 9 different programs that BMO offers, and a couple of that I wanted to highlight is HBCU. For many of you that are affiliated with the Realtors network, I know HBCUs should be closely attached, knowing that they offer some incentive if you are, I believe, a graduate or in school. The I-10 borrower. In this environment, I want to say kudos to BMO for keeping that product alive and well, for individuals that do not have Social Security numbers but have an I-10, because very few banks are supporting that now. And then not every bank is on the CalFHA platform, so to know that they've expanded their platform to be attached to the state mortgage option is fantastic. And then a hidden gem that many of you may not know is that your Section 8 potential borrowers who have a subsidy for rental can convert that subsidy into home ownership. So good to know that that is an option as well. And I'll say, and then this will help segment into the question, I know firsthand a lot of this would not be available without the help and support of Emma Biggie, who has been with BMO through the Bank of the West merger, who's out there every day finding ways to add to the platform of BMO. So I want to thank you, Emma. And then also just want to make a couple of clarifications of RNHS's role. So Richmond Community Foundation holds the Black Wealth Builder Fund. And in order to gain access to those funds, you go directly to Richmond Community Foundation, and they'll give up to 15,000, or excuse me, up to $20,000 to qualified borrowers. And the only qualification is your first time home buyer and you identify as Black. And then also, they also administer the Contra Costa Spark Point grant that is funded through US Bank. So with that, I just wanted to acknowledge that out of all of the lenders that we work with, BMO has probably one of the most robust platforms in getting first-time home buyers across the finish line. So, Ashley, your question is the Black Wealth Builder still available? That's a Richmond Community Foundation question. It's a privately funded fund, so it is, first come, first serve. When funds get depleted and more money gets added, then the fund becomes available. So it's ongoing, but funds can fluctuate based on utilization. So Emma had a question from the lender and real estate professional standpoint. When you are in transaction, what is the challenge you all are facing the most? So this is actually opening up to the audience. Realtors, when you're working with your lenders, what are some of the most challenging things you face in the middle of a transaction? And you're welcome to take yourself off mute and answer the question.
Well, I personally was in a transaction last month, and the lender had promised so much, but then couldn't deliver. So he was trying to buy a fourplex, and then he said he didn't have enough for the sustainable, oh gosh, sustainable test. I guess the rents wasn't high enough. So anyway, had to go to another lender. That lender couldn't do. So now we're on the third lender.
So Dee, can you share a little bit more about the lender offering more than what they could deliver? Was it that they were setting the expectation that there was going to be a number of down payment or resources to support, or was it the assumption of underwriting where they were telling you that, yeah, you're good, and then when it got to final underwriting, it kind of like blew up? What was
Well,
the premise of the
he wasn't
offering?
he wasn't getting any down payment assistance. He had $100,000 and he wanted to buy a fourplex.
Okay.
Then another one, I was am the listing agent for, and that buyer's lender is having trouble. And now they're on their second lender during the process. So they said something about the buyers were self-employed and something went wrong with their IRS filing. They put the figures in the wrong area, and that now the Rocket Mortgage could not perform. So now they're on their second lender.
So lenders, either Caesar or Emma, anything that you can offer based on Dee's feedback that can maybe help her as she's navigating additional lenders based on the feedback she got from the original lenders?
Yes, yes, of course. I would love to, talk to her more detail about her transaction and see how I can best help her and her customer.
Yeah, but any feedback you can give maybe to the greater audience when, a person is looking to acquire multifamily, what lenders typically look at as far as benchmark of rents that are required, is there a percentage or anything that would be required to help with their eligibility or affordability?
So yeah, so we do allow for if the multifamily property is currently being rented out, then great, we can use that rental income, but we can only use 75% of that rental income to help a customer qualify to purchase that multifamily property. In most cases, down payment assistance programs, when multifamily properties are not eligible for down payment assistance programs. So the customer will have to go, do it with their own funds and their income plus the rental income that we can use. Again, only 75%. We do factor in a 25% vacancy factor. That's why we can only use 75% of the rental income. There, we do have one program that a down payment assistance program that does allow for a duplex. A duplex is an eligible property type, and that's with the Chenoa Fund down payment assistance program. It's an FHA program. So the duplex of property will need to be, in good condition because it will have to go through an FHA appraisal inspection. But yeah, yeah.
Well, hopefully that part is helpful. And then on the other end, I know self-employment can be a little tricky. It looks like when the lender went to get the tax transcript, possibly what was recorded on the application was different than the transcript. So I don't know what, a lender might be able to do there, but any thoughts from a lender's perspective of getting a self-employed individual prepared to manage the expectation of what, a lender might see when they actually pull those transcripts?
Yeah, so self-employment is a little different, and it depends. It's a little more challenging depending on the type of self-employment the customer has. You can have a customer that has a partnership. It can be a corporation. It can be an S corporation, or it could just be a sole proprietorship. So it just depends because I know in most cases a lot of self-employed customers, especially when they're a corporation or an S corporation, they don't know how their taxes are being prepared. I've had a lot of customers that I've asked them, hey, okay, what is your monthly gross income, and they will always overestimate what their actual monthly gross income because they feel that in their mind they think they're making this much, but when on paper on taxes, their CPA or their tax preparer actually has a lot of deductions, business deductions, so their income is much less than what they calculate. So in those type of cases, I like to work up front with those customers, and I request of them their two most recently filed business tax returns. If they are a corporation, in some cases they'll be an employee. They'll pay themselves as an employee. So I will need to see what their two most recent years business and personal tax returns are, so I can pre-qualify them. And I do use the same worksheet that our underwriters use. So when I do pre-qualify them and the file does go to the underwriter, there isn't any surprises with income. So that's what I do. I try to make sure that I do all the work up front, especially with self-employed customers, because they do have different income, and the way they report it is different than what they think they're making, and what they're reporting is almost always different.
Thank you for that, Caesar. And I would say this is a good segue to say why housing counseling agencies are so important because your housing counselor can work through those conversations with your client because we know when you're self-employed, you want to be able to show the IRS you're not making any money so you don't have to pay taxes. But when you're trying to buy something, you have to demonstrate you have income. So there is a strategy around it, and your housing counselors can support your client to what we call to get lender ready. So hopefully that helps. So if there are any other questions in the chat, please go ahead and put them there now. But we're going to transition. We're going to talk to some professionals that are living and breathing the work that you do every day as real estate professionals. I shared their bios earlier. Many of you may already know them personally, but I was excited to be able to create this time to talk to two individuals that I know are adamantly invested in first-time home buyer home ownership. So I want to kick it off with Ashley. Just in the brief dialogue that we had, anything resonating with you before we jump into our conversation?
Yes, when Miss D and hi Miss D was talking about the self-sufficiency, a lot of first-time home buyers are gung-ho to be like, I want multifamily, I want 4 units. And I'm like, that's great. However, they're not educated and realtors aren't educated on what that means. There is a self-sufficiency test and it has to garner so much rents. There's not a lot of programs that support that. So it's great that you guys are on here learning that so you won't lead your client into hope, false hope because that happens a lot. It's really only the duplexes that can get you your first time home buyer, that down payment assistance and support that you really need.
So let's kick it off with this, Ashley. Why have you built your brand and your practice to be adamantly invested in home ownership for first-time home buyers?
Um, it just stems from my background, like being in housing, starting at Cal HFA, I was already taught first time home buyers. And so that was my passion, to travel and educate them on programs. But when I got into the industry and got my license, I was thrown into luxury, luxury, luxury. And it bothered me because why is that the conversation? There is a sector of the market that there will always and forever be a first time home buyer. And I feel like we're taught as realtors to like forget them and then go do the multi-million dollar homes. But you don't understand that first time home buyer is going to graduate and graduate and graduate. And you could get into luxury. I just didn't like the narrative of only do luxury. I was really wanting to stand with my mission and I want to support first time home buyers. So that's what I did.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to bring Rhea into the conversation because based on your point, Ashley, people are coming to you saying they want to be a homeowner. This is their first time, and you've done an incredible job of navigating them through. But Rhea, on the other hand of things, through her property management, has a vested interest in getting renters to homeowners. So, Rhea, talk to us a little bit about that and what was your passion behind segmenting that market.
Definitely. Thank you, Nikki, and thanks for having me. I have a background in originally in mortgage for 11 years and then in real estate as a real estate broker. About 2 years ago, I decided to expand into property management because I work with a national organization, as you heard earlier, that focuses on home ownership and advocacy. And we do a lot of work bringing people into the room. In starting a property management company, I thought I need to get to those people. How do I get to those people versus them coming to us? And that's where property management came into play. For me, property management isn't just about maintaining the investor's property and collecting rent, but also providing a source of education for renters in order to budget responsibly and also look for home ownership opportunities. Now, a lot of people will ask, well, what do the investors think about that? You're actually promoting home ownership and education and savings. And I was like, let me tell you, most property owners have no problem with me educating the tenants because that creates responsible tenants and on-time rent payments because they have a larger goal. Also, the market, and we talked about the self-sufficiency test, the market grows rapidly, and sometimes the rent and the rent rates don't match the markets. And so what you'll find, and what Dee may have found in that property, is that the market rents for that particular property was not at a rate sustainable for the mortgage. And so all of that full circle comes into play in starting with the property management and the tenants, and really taking an initiative to educate and inspire.
Mm. Well, I want to thank you for that because I would say that is, I hate to use the word innovative because it's overused, but an innovative approach because RNHS is also a property managers. And I can say as a landlord, yes, it would be ideal that we are able to cycle people in and out of units and ideally leaving us to become a homeowner. And from the housing perspective, in affordable housing, it only makes sense because if you have people transitioning out of rentals into home ownership, then you have people having the ability to take on now those vacant units, which then eliminates the need of needing to build, 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 assuming that people are just going to stay stagnant as rental clients. So I appreciate you taking that as a model because I think that's the holistic approach if we're really trying to solve what people call the housing crisis. So Ashley, you kind of touched on it, but take a deeper dive about, mistakes or the educational needs of a realtor. If you had to say the top three things that, realtors can do differently to better support their clients as a first-time home buyer, what would they be?
Patience is the first one. You have to have a lot of patience working with first-time home buyers because they don't know, which is why it's important to number two, to make sure they get educated. Be a part of that process of helping them learn what's going on. I've seen so many times people just being dragged through the process, which is how I ended up creating the curriculum because they didn't know what to expect, which made the process a little more stressful for them. And I would say get educated on what's out there. So making sure that you're connecting like today with lenders because every lender offers different things. And your client may not fit in that box, but there's so many other boxes that they can get into. So I would say patience, make sure you're educating them and make sure you're connecting with them with resources that could support them through this process.
Thank you for that. So I want to pivot just a little bit because oftentimes real estate professionals are looked at to be highly transactional. But both you, Ashley and Ria, have done something different in building out your real estate business. So, Ria, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how you have created your brokerage and the type of services that you're providing to make it a little bit broader than just transactions.
Definitely. And so I'm always recreating how information is sent to buyers based on things that I come across. I love buyers that ask a ton of questions because there's always some question that had never been asked. And I'm like, oh, let me remember that to share it with someone else. And so what we do is, and one of my agents is on the line, so she can attest to this. We have a workflow of how we connect. And so it's very important. And I continue to reiterate to the agents that upon each step, we have an email workflow and a conversation specific to particular points in the transaction after the home buyer consultation. Because you have the home buyer consultation, it's all good. You're learning, you're ready to buy. But when you're in the transaction, it's very high stress environment and you want to reel them back in and remind them what is it that you are going through throughout that 10-step process right now. So we reintroduce what they're experiencing at that time, be it their underwriting conditions or the appraisal or the inspection. And so we have those touch points. And so what I've also expanded to now, and what I really press upon my agents is that although we do not do mortgages, it is very important to understand the basics of mortgage so that you can make sure that all information is being communicated between the lender and the buyer so that nothing is missed or prevented. And so in to address that, we've actually expanded our home ownership consultation to include some basics of mortgage. And so I'm not an advocate of real estate professionals saying, well, that's not my job. I don't do mortgages. No, we have to work together in unity. And so it's so important to make sure that we're giving them the basics so that they can take it and back to their lender. And I've actually watched my daughter go through a pre-approval process, and she's looking to purchase out of state. So I got to take like a backseat view of what she's going through, and then add in all of those points and seeing it from another perspective through her eyes. It basically just confirmed to me that I'm doing all the things right, because she's just like looking at me like, mom, 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 but I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so important, and listening to acronyms being thrown at her. She has no understanding of what those acronyms mean. And I was just like, my head was just spinning like, oh my gosh. So we really have to really take a step back and be educators. And we're always talking about our value proposition. And so this right now, in this day and age, this is our value proposition, is really taking that individualized attempt to educate, and what they don't know, what they don't know. And AI cannot replace that.
Absolutely. And I think this is another validation why partnership matters, why HUD counseling agencies matter, why the 8-hour course is significant, because we've had our own stories where we say you're not going to be a subject matter expert, but you start getting familiar with some of the terms. So as you're going through the process, you're like, oh, wait, I remember that. Oh, wait, that doesn't sound right. But you need some guidance to even know what you should be looking out for. And I think, Caesar, this brings up a good opportunity to bring you into the conversation. What do you believe are some common misconceptions first-time home buyers have about the home buying process from your perspective?
That first time home buyers that,
Yeah.
that in most cases that they're not, that they can't qualify for down payment assistance programs. Um, I know I do hear a lot of first time home buyers tell me that, there are realtors out there that look at their offers or their pre-qualifications or pre-approvals that have down payment assistance programs with them, that, oh, because they're using down payment assistance, that they're not eligible or they don't qualify, which I think it's a big myth. And in those cases, I do ask to speak with that realtor to educate them and show them that no, just because they're using down payment assistance programs does not make them eligible first time
Thank
home
you.
buyer. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. And I think that goes back to Ashley's point of being really clear and understanding what the transaction is or isn't, and the realtor not putting themselves in a position to disqualify their client before they've ever had the opportunity to talk to the resources. Ashley, I just love how this works. It just flows. So my next question is, how do you help buyers navigate the fear, uncertainty and affordability challenges in today's market?
Yes, it is through the programming that I created is how I really help them with that. It's really more so the mantra we use in our program is called knowledge replaces fear, because the more you know, the less you're fearful of. What we do is we really instill that confidence to get them into the space of understanding what they're getting into. We talk about their whys, why they're doing this, because it's going to be hard. We've had people in our program lose parents while they're buying a house. We've helped formerly homeless people who have their own misconceptions of what they can possibly do because of their past. And so we just make sure that we instill confidence. We make sure that they're working with the right realtors. We don't just work with any realtors. I think my biggest issue with us in this industry is we're so focused on commission, and they get commission breath. And that's not how we operate. We have a serve first mindset. So when I look at other realtors that are working with their clients and they're bragging, oh, I'm getting so many deals, I'm doing that. I'm like, how many people are you serving? What is your impact? Like the 6 letters that we work with is called impact. Their 6 letters are income. So I'm trying to help realtors understand that it's your job to serve and not worry about I'm getting 30 clients here. I'm there. Nobody's a dollar sign. You're really helping people get into you're helping people like create generational wealth. You're changing the trajectory of their lives. This is the biggest purchase, and you're a part of that. So I don't take that lightly, and I don't think realtors should take that lightly.
I'm so glad you're my friend. So what I'm hearing is realtors learning that there is a difference between operating in lack or prosperity, knowing if you just do the right thing, it will all work in the end. And for you, Ria, there's some real tangible things happening in the market. So my question to you is, what trends are you seeing among buyers who are struggling to enter the market?
Mhm. Well, I'm seeing buyers making more money. However, their debt is pretty high. So, strategizing how the debt impacts their buying ability, that may not be the case when you are renting a property. However, another trend I am seeing is definitely the gig economy. So, um, right now, a lot of people are realizing that, hey, I may need more than one. No lie, I have one group of friends. They all have multiple full-time jobs. So I can't really say anything about that because I actually own a real estate brokerage and a property management company, and I do all kinds of things. But it's like common. It's common that people are even trying to hold down two full-time reporting into work jobs in order to meet the economy of the Bay Area. And so, with the actual gig economy, and the second job is really how do you leverage that, and how do you prioritize what you're saving for? Are you saving for trips? Are you saving for future equity? And so I try to remind people to enter with the exit plan in mind. So you can, it's only so long you can work that many jobs and sustain a healthy lifestyle, right? But you can invest and have assets and build equity to plan for retirement early so that you can live your best life. So that, yeah, I'm seeing people take on more debt and then trying to take on jobs to overcome that additional debt, but it all boils down back to really strategy and strategizing. And one thing that we always talk about, but one thing my son, he's 20, I identified when he was looking to buy a new car. He was like, Mom, people should really teach us this in high school. Like, why aren't the schools? And I'm like, son, you're preaching to the choir here. Financial literacy is everything.
That part. And again, we are the sum of the five we hang with, so I'm glad you're part
Right.
of my five because you're so. And I hope that you in the audience are taking heed to this. As a real estate professional, I know you've all gotten into this work for different reasons, different passions, different goals and objectives. But my hope this conversation gives you a broad view of a number of ways that you can leverage your practice to do good by supporting first-time home buyers, being able to figure out what your sustainable plan will be of how you can navigate the different models of being a real estate professional, and how to build a brand of excellence, how to, cultivate the relationships that you need. Because I heard recently that your net worth is your net work. It's going back to the sum of the five. The people that you tend to be in close proximity with is really those individuals that can help you garner the financial success that you may be looking for. So I want to take a pause here. A lot of great gems have been shared up until this point. So I want to open it up to the audience. What's resonating with you? What clarifying questions, thoughts, or comments that you have for our discussion thus far? So again, if you have a comment or have a question, please unmute yourself and ask away. Or any aha moments? Okay, well, then we're going to continue. You can definitely put your comments in the chat, but I also want to reference something that Caesar has shared, reminding you if you are licensed in other states, BMO can lend in all 50 states. And thank you, Caesar, for also letting us know that the HBCU/PBI grant program requires a first-time homebuyer to work with a realtist. How many of you put with thumbs up that are in the audience are a realtist? Raise your hands high. You should be proud of it because it has a rich history. For those that are not, please reach out to Rhea, Ashley, and others that are well embedded because if you do work closely with HBCUs, they have to work with you to be able to gain access to that BMO product. Okay, I think I'm going to move on to some questions for the entire panel. So, based on what resonates with you, please share. If you could change one thing about the home buying process for first-time home buyers, what would it be?
I would say mandatory education. How do we send people into a space of financial, like you're buying this biggest purchase, your finances have to be right, and no one's taught you anything? There's a lot of people who have been taken advantage of. So if there's one thing I would change, I would literally put education, like Taria's son's point, in high school. Start them early so they're not afraid to have those conversations.
Yeah. And appreciate that because that's the lifeline of a HUD counseling agency. And I can say we are now seeing programs that no longer require the certificate in order to get into home ownership, which used to be kind of the point of entry to gain access to the many things. So thank you for sharing that. Other thoughts, Rhea or Caesar, if you could change something about the first time home buyer process, what would it be?
I definitely agree with Ashley. It all boils down to education. And so we have that available, but it's not always a requirement. And so one thing that I think is really also important is to really and go over budget. And so that's where the HUD counseling comes in to play, but not everybody has come to us or to lenders through the HUD counseling pathway. And so really taking time. I know that in lending, we look at the debt to income ratio. Of how much debt they're taking on. But really understanding what their responsibilities of home ownership is with budgeting and reserves as well. So not only as an investment, because sometimes of our first-time home buyers are actually buying multi-unit properties through FHA, 2 to 4 units, you're able to buy, and you're not only a first-time home buyer, but then you are a rental property owner, which requires reserves and maintenance upkeep. And so part of that on the real estate side can be done during the home inspection. I think that's usually a good time for real estate professionals to introduce budget because I'm basically telling them like you need to be at the home inspection because you don't know this house. You weren't here when the house was built. And so now you're learning about the house through a qualified professional. And so I think that's also a good time to introduce what your budget looks like as far as upkeep, lawn maintenance, those type of things.
Thank you for that. And I have to say, I'm going to do something for our organization for our post-purchase conversation. The 10 things, actually maybe more for pre-purchase, the 10 things that your realtor should assist you with, and it goes back to that inspection. Because we all agree that the home buying process gets sexy, you're just trying to get it done. It's kind of like you just kind of lose all concept of thinking because it's just so fast. But a great realtor would be one that when they go through that home inspection, they're helping their client understand the age of a water heater, the age of a furnace, what is coming up on the inspection. Your roof is only 3 years left. Is that something you negotiate through the transaction, or are you helping them understand what budgetary needs are going to be required in 3 years if you need to figure out how to replace a roof? And how many of you are actually going through the inspection, understanding what those things mean and what the consequences to your buyer will be once that home is sold? And are you interacting with them after the sale and transaction? Because they really should be calling on you as the real estate professional anytime something goes on because they see you as that subject matter expert. Caesar, any thoughts for you? You being in it, going through the process of getting these loans approved, if you had the opportunity to change something in the first time homebuyer process, what would it be?
I mean, I agree with the whole panel. I mean, homebuyer education is really important, and you touched on it as well. I mean, even though in most cases properties are being sold as is, it is important for the customer or first time homebuyer to understand, the life of a roof, a water heater, like you touched on. It's good for them to understand that. I also myself do talk a lot to customers about that stuff. I try to educate them a lot in the process. As a mortgage banker, it is my responsibility to make sure they understand the loan terms, they understand, the type of loan that we're doing, and um, you know, um, in some cases when the loan does have to be paid back, how and why and how much they have to pay. So yeah, I think education is super important up front, and I don't think it should just stop in the beginning. I think it should be an ongoing, education thing. Even if they already took a homebuyer education course, I think they should always refresh at least every year. So I think that's super important. Is just education. I think.
Thank you. And so anybody who knows me and has followed me on this journey, I use, the idea of Oprah. The only time I can pretend to be Oprah is, doing this. So here's what I've decided. Since education keeps coming up, and Tisha, I'm going to ask that you hold us accountable. And I am being mindful of time and people are dropping because I know people got things to do. So we are likely to not be to the 11 o'clock hour. But for those that stay on until we complete, we are going to be offering, or not offering, giving away one of Ashley's books to you as a realtor for you to start to understand this process through the home buyer's lens, as well as giving you some gems of the things you should look out for as you're supporting your first time home buyer. So again, those that stay on the line until we're complete will get one of the books that we use in our home buying process that has been written by Ashley so that it can help you with your education process. So stay on because we still got some good content. So, Ashley, I want to move it back to you. What advice would you give a new realtor who wants to better serve a first time home buyer?
I would say to educate yourself, not just on programs, but the industry itself. Connect yourself with people that are serving, ask questions, um, gain those skills that you need. Learn how to negotiate properly for a first-time home buyer. It's a different conversation when they don't come in with a lot of money. You got to know how to write your offers, how to convey the programs that they're actually using. I think a lot of offers won't get accepted because they don't know what their client is actually using and they rely on the lender. And to Ria's point, yes, we're not loan officers, but you're supposed to know the basics of what your client is getting into. And so I would just say connect with the right people that you see are serving, educate yourself, and believe that you know that you could do it. You're making a difference. And it's a learning curve. It took me 13 years to get here. And I feel like people see me, they think, oh, I could do it. It looks so easy. No, you bump your head. I've had doors slammed in my face. I've been told no, but at everything, I've had so much impact with educating myself and gaining these skills to help people.
Thank you. And Ria, you are a gem for me because I can't stop thinking about the transition of a renter becoming a homeowner because in the affordable housing space, home ownership tends to be an elitist issue. So when we're in this space working to address this housing crisis in California, our industry does not see ownership as one of those pathways. Because it's like if you can afford a house, you don't have no problems. But for you to be thinking about a renter getting into the home buyer space, and I see this for the realtors on the line, this is your pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the spaces of renters today, in a year, 18 months, they could be your client. So my
Mm-hmm.
question for you is what creative strategies are helping renters successfully transition into homeownership?
I would say really understanding the where they fit as far as first of all down payment assistance. And so even myself sometimes I'm like have to keep up with okay, what is this program offering versus this program versus this program? So really staying in the space of where do I fall in down payment assistance, and a lot of people that are employed and have what they think are, great jobs and income still qualify and they don't know it. So that's going to be a key piece in working on, a lot of the first time homes out here are not perfect. They need work. And so it's very important that they keep an open mind about the reserves of making a house their own. And, sometimes I have to fight with buyers on, paint color. Like, please, come on. Let's paint after close of escrow. This can't stop us. So so really setting out, what it is that they want to accomplish, short and long term. Because another thing is, looking at unless they're doing like Airbnbs or shared housing, a lot of the new generation, especially coming out of college, you already had roommates, so house hacking and sharing and renting out rooms are not unfamiliar to you. So, but if not, starting with something smaller and being okay with starting with something smaller. I keep referencing my kids, but they're kind of at that young adult age, so it's just like it's just hilarious to me. But I told my daughter, like, if you're looking to sublease out in Texas, you have to commit to that. That if that's your plan, you have to stick to it because there's no reason for you to buy a 3 or 4 bedroom house with no kids and a dog. Come on, what are we doing here? So so being realistic and just seeing it in as a steps. It's just like investing in the stock market. You're not going to take your entire savings and invest. You're going to test out a stock here and there, and then gradually escalate into being a full investor. So same thing with home ownership. It's an asset. You might not want to start with the biggest, best, and brightest to the full capacity of your income. Smart and start in small increments and grow from there.
Thank you for that. So a couple of dots I'm connecting before I ask the next question. One, Caesar and Urea touched on it, that people are often surprised that they're in better position than they thought they were when they do get into the process. That many people don't understand that you don't need a 700 credit score, 20% down to qualify. And it ties into Ashley's point of realtors' mindsets of pre-qualifying the client based on a commission need versus that client really being in position to acquire. And there was an old adage, and the statistics might have changed, but depending on your age and life cycle, most first-time home buyers, the first home is not their forever home. So to your point, Ria, you're just trying to get in where you fit in. And likely as, families expand, houses expand, but you don't need that 3-bedroom house if you're an individual. You're just trying to get in to leverage what we haven't talked about. Why I'm sure we're advocating is the wealth, the ability to expand using equity and all the things of why we think home ownership is important. And that's why we created to changing the narrative of home ownership, going back to the rental conversation. If you can afford rent in the Bay Area, it's likely you can afford a mortgage. So you cannot not take a look at that. So if you don't get anything else out of this conversation as you're looking to find other potential clients, do not ignore the rental population because they're paying market rate rents that are close to a mortgage. So again, a group conversation. So whoever would like to start, based on your experiences, what are you seeing today's buyers needing the most from industry professionals, from lenders, from real estate professionals, and others helping them through the process? What is some of the feedback you're hearing or seeing that your future buyers are in need of?
I think definitely working together as a team with the real estate agent, a lender, all parties, even my home inspector. My home inspector knows that when he's there, he knows that it's an education moment for my client. He already knows. So he goes into the whole spiel. He knows to walk them through, show them where different parts of the house are. So we're working together as a team. I don't have to wonder that wonder if he's just going to come and do the work and leave and send the report later. No, that is not what my expectations are of my home inspector. And this is what it is. So communicating that with the lender. Do not send my client a pre-approval without a closing cost estimate. And then when is the appointment for the closing cost estimate review? Because they get their pre-approval and they tend to forget when it's time to write an offer what their closing costs are, what their total monthly payment is. So I want to make sure that my lender, when then sending the pre-approval, has also had the closing cost conversation. So working together as a team in all aspects of the process is going to be very instrumental in making the entire process something that is a success for the buyer.
I'll piggyback off of that too, just because it does take a village, which is why it's you and I. This is why I call my foundation that, because educating hundreds of people, their biggest need is the understanding of what's going on with the numbers, understanding the down payment assistance that they're getting. So yes, we could talk about down payment assistance, but realtors don't understand, is this a subordinate lien? How is that going to affect them? Is it a grant? Is it a grant with terms? Like you have to understand that because it is going to affect their financing. And then when I work with my lender partners, because we specifically work with programs we've created ourselves and then work with other banks as well. But I make sure that we get on a call, all of us, and I want a visual view of like, what are these numbers? How much do we need? So we all can answer those questions and make them feel comfortable. Also, talking to them with the language is an issue. You have to come down to a third grade level. They did not go to school for real estate. They don't know acronyms. So talk to them in their language. Don't talk over their head because then that turns them off and they don't want to do it.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add about your experience and what buyers are looking for in industry professionals?
I mean, yeah, I get a lot. I mean, so I totally agree with what Ria mentioned, and definitely bring up the closing cost conversation. Let them know that it's not just the down payment that's needed. We also need closing costs and what those closing costs giving them an idea of what the closing costs are going to be. Just like Ashley touched on, tell them about the down payment assistance program that they're getting approved for. Let them know what those terms are. What the terms are to pay back that down payment assistance program if it is required to be paid back. And like for example, with Cal half of my home, they do require you to pay that portion of that they let you borrow at 1% simple interest. Calculate that 1% simple interest. What that means, like this is the amount you're gonna have to pay back in addition to what you borrow. So it's just letting them know, and then give them okay. Look, and if you sell or refinance, yes, you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to pay this off, and just getting them to agree and getting them to understand. Yes, okay, and so that's super important. But yeah, I think definitely, like again, we said it before in education, just educating the client and letting them know exactly and being transparent, 100% transparent, and letting them know, listen, this is what this is what a 30-year fixed term means. This is what your interest rate is. No, this can this rate will this rate be forever? Not necessarily. You do have the chance to refinance this rate when rates drop. I have the conversation with them. Look, the longer you have your home, you build equity in your home. That equity is a source of cash that you can access in the near future. So all these conversations that I have is totally helpful. And all my customers, once I close my loan with them, they're super happy. That in most cases I'm getting referrals from their friends and family. But yeah, I think everything that everyone touched on this panel is super important. Just like Ashley said, it does take a village. I definitely need the real estate agent to be on the same page, understand the down payment assistance program that we're offering. And of course, I walk and talk if they can actually help, if they can actually get the seller to give some seller concessions. I have had a lot of real estate agents do that. They'll get 5,000, 10,000, anything helps. With especially with first time home buyers who have great credit scores, a really good employment, they just don't have enough funds saved. So yeah, anything like that helps for sure.
Yeah. And I think that goes to Ashley's earlier point of knowing how to write the offer and knowing what leverage points you do have to support your buyer, especially when there are some conditions related to the condition of the property, knowing that you have some power there to negotiate.
And
And then,
and I get it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Nikki. My
no, go
bad.
ahead, Caesar.
Um, and what I get a lot still is, and this is more on the seller's agent side, is when they do receive one of my clients' offers, and it shows that they're getting CalHFA down payment assistance programs, that agent passes on that offer because they feel that my customer, they don't qualify. Oh, they need down payment assistance program. Oh, this is going to be a tricky deal. We're not going to get it done, and it's going to take forever. And that's just a myth. No, because CalHFA, I mean, they literally give us approvals within a few hours. They don't even take days or weeks. So it's a big misconception out there that agents think that, oh, this customer needs down payment assistance. Oh, this we're not going to be able to get this deal done. So yeah, we just need to change that mentality, especially on the seller agent side when they see that type of offer coming.
Thank you for that, Caesar. And I saw your hand pop up, Ashley. So what's coming up for you?
It just goes back to, as an agent, you need to know how to communicate the offer, which is why you can't just work with any agent. Before that offer would have been sent, Caesar, I would have called and said, hey, this is what we're getting into. This is the profile. This is what this means. You never shoot a blind offer to a seller's agent and not explain to them what's going on. So to my point, you got to know what you're doing. You got to know how to educate them. It's our job.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that
that
point,
part.
there's still bias in this environment. There are still concerns about people moving into certain neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
So there is bias on both the seller's side, meaning the agent, putting up the shield to where a lot of times the seller won't even see the offer, or the buyer's agent feeling as though the person won't qualify. You have a fiduciary responsibility to your client on either side to be able to communicate effectively. So, really, it becomes the buyer and the seller's decision on do they move forward, not the professional's decision about how they will move forward. And one thing that came up for me is that we will start in our pre-purchase. Really, we say that it's a team, but really advocating that that buyer gets all of the interested parties together, because a disjointed team can make a disjointed transaction. And even on a good day, when people got everything in alignment, a real estate transaction is just difficult. So when there's disjointment, it can be more challenging. So I did see Valencia's comment. That's why it's vital that we as real estate professionals need to understand the programs our buyers are using. Absolutely. And the way that you can do that is getting well connected to your housing counseling agencies, going out with your, loan officers in the area, coffee date, lunch date, having those conversations. Google is your friend, but definitely agree. Caesar had a question a little earlier. What are real estate agents seeing? What cities are currently offering affordable housing prices? So either for the panel or in the audience, are you seeing areas that would be considered affordable? And maybe Caesar speak to affordability because affordability means different things to different people. So um, how would you quantify that so
I
the real
mean,
estate professionals can answer?
as we all know, the Bay Area is getting, expensive, and I'm just trying to, because I have a lot of customers that are pre-qualified, but they're only pre-qualified for 600,000 or less. What cities? I know Antioch has gotten super popular, and homes are starting to skyrocket in that area. But where can I, tell customers where to look at, what cities to look at, where they can find something that's still affordable, around the Bay Area.
So panelists, we'll let you take the opportunity to answer first and then open it up to the audience if they have any insights. So Rhea, Ashley, thoughts?
What I've seen, Caesar, is to your point, what you said. They're all going to like Pittsburgh, Antioch, Tracy, and they don't want to. And so what I encourage them to do is we kind of play with numbers. I'm like, yeah, you're approved for 600,000, and this may not be what you want to hear, but let's see what other options there are for you. Maybe we could buy the rate down to make it more affordable, or I just kind of give them the bigger picture. You may not can't afford Oakland right now. You may not can't get that huge house. Let's try multifamily. Like I try to find ways to make it affordable, but to your point, it's not. It's really hard, and everybody's moving outside of the major cities. They're going into Bay Point, Antioch, Pittsburgh. I had so many people, they're coming out to Fairfield, Sacramento. They're leaving the Bay, and I know that's not what they want to do. So it's a struggle for all of us trying to help serve our communities.
Yeah. Rhea,
I
any thoughts?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a more support, maybe even with the city around the renovation financing options that are available. When listing houses in certain areas in Oakland, I can guarantee almost every property is going to have foundation issues that could be an 80 to $90,000 expense. So so really, advocates like ourselves really can possibly speak up in the community in the cities and see what the city can do to help. When they're transferring property, our buyers and sellers are negotiating sewer lateral compliance and sidewalk ordinances to help the city. But what is the city doing to actually help the homeowner preserve the land that they're purchasing in that city? So I know, renovation financing can be really scary to most clients. I try to introduce it when I can, but I know it's an overwhelming thought. But really, that's going to be the answer in certain areas to provide that affordability and that safety.
And anyone from the audience, any thoughts in your work when it talks to affordability in area? Are you seeing any trends? Okay. Well, I will say this is a great commercial for the Realtors. The Realtors has a strong policy area. And a lot of the housing bonds that we're going to be voting on in November and city and county bonds that are coming, it's really been focused on development or down payment assistance, but nothing for the future home buyer. So what if there was a policy for the city of Oakland with, I think, their Measure U bond, that a portion had to go through for revitalization, or a bond that could help the city do those repairs so it wouldn't fall on the buyer or negotiation with the seller. So these are ways that policy can support, because there's a lot of money being poured into it, but how could money be carved out for that exact issue? Um, and then also with area, we know that affordability tends to be in distressed areas less desirable areas to, some of the points that were made here. But now we have a new trend we have to think about. It used to be environmental, but now we got to think about data centers. And the impact of how technology is now impacting already distressed communities because data centers are not going to be put in the city of Piedmont. They're being put in the Fairfields, the Vallejos, the Antiochs, where many of our people are finding themselves moving. So that's another strong advocacy arm in getting our buyers familiar with what environment can look like in the next 5 years. So I think in closing, before closing, is there anything coming up for the audience? Any thoughts, any clarification, anything before I ask our panel the final question? D.
Well, I wasn't available, but to Caesar's question, there are homes in Oakland, 600, and sometimes the buyers just gonna have to give up something. Maybe they're looking for a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, but maybe they're gonna have to end up with a 3 bedroom, 1 bath. Because again, it's not their forever home. It's just a starter home. So there are homes in Oakland, 589. The longer they stay on, the more you can negotiate to 550. But yeah, get in. Just gotta give up
No,
something.
it's good to know. It's good to know, but like most of the panel said, is a lot of these customers they're shooting for the stars, and they're not wanting to sacrifice a bedroom, you know. But yeah, no, I get that a lot. I get a lot of customers that, like I said, they shoot for the stars, and they don't want to sacrifice to get that starter home, and then move
They're
up
gonna
from there.
sacrifice something. They're gonna sacrifice gas, commuting from,
Huh?
they're gonna sacrifice something.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, I
You're
think
right.
that's the role of the realtor, managing expectations, talking about the long game. This isn't a short game, all the things. But the only way you can do that is through relationship and not transaction. And then also understanding there are different methods of acquisition and ownership. We've been supporting Paragap, which is a co-buying platform. So could you get two or three people together to buy a home? Because, three incomes are better than one, especially if you're single, right out of college, whatever the situation is. So there are some different pathways instead of having that one or two individuals trying to acquire. And I think that goes to Ria's point of you're already housemates, so why not make it an investment? So go
Can I add to
ahead.
that really quick? I think too, what we have to understand and how we should let our clients know. I've noticed they rent in really nice areas. Just because you rent there doesn't mean you can afford to buy there. And that's the biggest issue that I see. I'm like, because your landlord bought this a long time ago. So you're paying well over his mortgage. That house is now worth $1 million. You can't afford $1 million house right now. So you might have to do functional obsolescence, like Miss D said, that 3-1. Rent out the rooms, like Rhea said. You got to get strategic when it comes to home ownership.
Okay, educate me. You gave me a new word. What is that? What did you just
Functional
say?
obsolescence. So basically, what that means, it's functional. So it's functional. People could live there, but they don't build like that no more. You're never going to see them build a 3 bedroom, 1 bath house anywhere.
Mhm.
But it's functional. So again, that'd be a great rental. I teach people you may not want to rent to tenants. It's a high risk sometimes. You don't know what's going on in your house. Put travel nurses in there. Rent out to insurance companies that are doing replacements. I have a client who's a friend. She was over her head in this mortgage and she wanted to rent her house out. However, it wasn't going to cover the rents. She wasn't going to get that high rents. So I was okay, bet. We rented it out to one of my nonprofit partners. She's now getting 4,500 rent when she was only going to get about 29, 3,000. So you got to get creative with how you now leverage your property as an investor.
That part. And understanding with multiple units, you are a landlord. So also reminding your clients that state of California is a tenant protected state. Cities and counties also have their policies. So you need to be really clear of what your responsibility is as a landlord. So, final question for the panel. What do you believe the future of first-time home ownership looks like over the next 5 years?
Well, I know for California, I'm just thinking like SB9 and the last bit splits. You're going to see more of either condoing of the ADUs, so smaller living units. I definitely want some. I talked to Nikki, I think about this in my backyard. I'm like, how many can I fit back there? But I think you'll definitely, now that we're able to subdivide land more easily, you'll see people taking more use of their land in order to create opportunity. And I think one, even within your family unit, it still creates ownership because if you can have ADUs on your land, but each, let's say, child has ownership of one of those ADUs and it's considered its own parcel, that's their asset and equity. So I think we'll see more of that. Especially, we heard about the fires in Los Angeles. I think that'll be like the probably test case for us of we should really watch how they develop because I would not be surprised if we see that type of lot split happening in the redevelopment of those areas. Richmond Neighborhood Housing themselves. You guys are subdividing four
Not
duplexes
you
into
guys,
eight.
you too.
Yes, us. Right.
You want to talk
We
about that relationship?
Right. We are developing four duplexes into eight single family homes. So that is creating the possibility of four homeowners into eight, and ultimately creating opportunity as North Richmond develops. We have the ferry coming. The ferry's already here. There's a big park being built right in the center of North Richmond. So all of that are signs of revitalization, and now's the time for us to make sure that our clients can take the opportunity. Not to mention that those homes will be below market rate, so the affordability will be there, and so the goal is the long-term investment to get in where they can.
Thank you for
Hey,
that. And we
question.
can't, I'm sorry, Caesar, but we can't just bypass that. So Ashley, Rhea, being a part of our emerging developer alumni, which I also see being of an expansion of your real estate business, are now infield small site developers assisting RNHS with this lot split and rehabbing these single family homes, which my understanding is you're interested to now do it on your own. So just another pathway of how your real estate business is expanding. So thank you for all the work you've done to get us to where we are. Caesar, I'm sorry, you had a question or a comment?
Well, I was just wondering because I had a property in Oakland, and it's a rezoning question.
Mhm.
So um, it was a mixed use property. It was a commercial. So in this case, the buyer knew um, the person in the zoning department, and they had rezoned the property, but we weren't able. I was still not able to get, I guess, us, the lender, on acknowledging that mixed use property now as a single family, or excuse me, as a fourplex,
Mhm.
because it still had that commercial unit down on the bottom.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering because Ria mentioned that, oh, we're switching duplexes into single family homes. I'm like, well, are you not running into any zoning issues with the city? Um, just that's what I was curious
Yeah.
about.
So I'll take this one, and Maria and Ashley, based on your experience, you can chime in. So Caesar, for your rezoning of commercial, where now you have housing at the top and the bottom is still commercial, yeah, I couldn't see a real residential mortgage covering that. That would be a commercial mortgage. Even though it's been rezoned to have housing, the fact that you still have commercial space operating, I'm not quite sure how a residential mortgage would support. Now for us, and this is key, and I don't want to be a policy wonk, but for those that have interest in moving work forward, this was an aha moment for us. We leveraged a SB9 urban lot splits to do the subdivision for the four duplexes that we're splitting pretty much splitting them down the middle. They each have separate parcel numbers. When SB 9 was approved by the state, and I've done this quite a bit in our advocacy of policy, and my question is always about execution. How is this going to work? So we were pretty much early on when SB 9 was passed, reached out to the county saying, hey, we're getting ready to acquire these things. We understand that, SB 9 urban lot split is a thing. First point was, well, this is new to us. It's going to take us about 6 to 8 months to figure out how we can make this happen. We're like, well, we ain't got that kind of time. Leveraging our influence, we got them up to speed. But just about a week ago, I had an aha moment. We are in the middle of closing a loan to be able to do this rehab work. There was about 11 people on the call. I counted the boxes. And it immediately told me when SB 9 was approved, they didn't talk to the other people. They didn't talk to title. They didn't talk to legal. They didn't talk to lenders. They didn't talk to anybody else. So here's the problem when policies are approved, because this is what we've learned. SB 9, which Rhea said will become a opportunity for people to split their backyards, build some things, sell some things. What SB 9 did said made it faster through a ministerial approval, meaning that the head surveyor in the county could sign off and approve. It didn't have to go through all the other steps. That's fine. However, to your point, Caesar, if the lender does not recognize that ministerial approval, which requires the lender oftentimes will say it needs to be recorded so that it is a county recorded public document to say that these splits have been approved. That's the disconnect. Because now we have to wait until the county approves it before it gives title what they need to be able to record it in order for us to get the money. So
Right.
through policy, especially for the advocates on the line, be very clear and advocate. We need to understand how this is going to work because SB 9 doesn't technically faster. And yes, there's an approval, but there's a second level of approval if you're trying to get funds. So that's been our lessons learned. Bree or Ashley, anything that you want to comment as it relates to zoning or any other work you've done related to zoning that might help Caesar's question?
I would say just having advocates in the city behind you is going to be very, very important. I had a developer that was in the North Richmond area, expanded out to Oakland, and they rezoned. Their rezoning was approved, and they spent several thousands of dollars. But then the community came behind and made reason to why it shouldn't be um, uh, a home built on the land, and they actually reversed the approval. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen, but it definitely it takes a lot of advocacy and having all the movers and shakers behind you in that mission.
Definitely piggyback off that. Literally, if you don't have the people to support you, it's going to be a uphill battle, a harder uphill battle because it's always an uphill battle.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is a value conversation because if we go back to the conversation we had earlier, a first-time home buyer likely is going to expand and want to do other things, and you as a real estate professional need to be prepared, if not equipped, to be able to navigate them through the different pathways of understanding how they can leverage their existing real estate or how they may want to get into other real estate transactions. Because the relationship doesn't just stop or should not just stop with that one transaction. So I appreciate us being able to expand the dialogue because I think at the end of the day it will support our first-time home buyers. So I believe Rhea shared the future of what she sees first-time home buyers in the next 5 years. Ashley, what are you seeing? What are your feelings?
I see smaller spaces, and they're being okay with that. I know when the past generations, like before the millennials, a lot of them were buying these huge houses, 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. I've noticed millennials are like, we don't need all that. We just need affordability. I'll take a 2 bedroom, one or 2 bedroom, 2 bath house, condo. Tiny homes, the tiny cottages are a big thing. And so I see more so pushing for affordability. I know millennials like to live a nice lifestyle, and you can't do that if you have a 5 bedroom house with a huge payment. So I do. I see a lot of people kind of going into smaller spaces.
Yeah, which speaks to that education, managing people's expectation, and that ownership looks different. So thank you for that. And I don't want to be remiss that Emma has been on this call for the duration, and Emma is an influencer within the bank. So Emma, you've heard it first. Education is key. So as you know, the bank is thinking about programs, seeing how education can be strongly supported as part of the reason and validation for a person to get into ownership. The type of loans that may be necessary. And I don't know if your bank or others are thinking through what does it look like to lend against, because again, SB9 can split the lot, but I don't know if the lenders understand how to lend against it, because that was an issue with ADUs, if people recall. You can get it built, but people didn't know how, no one knew how to fund it. So hopefully this has been insightful for you. So this concludes our time together, but would love to keep the conversation going with the audience. Again, if there's anything that resonated with you, questions, thoughts, or ideas for the panel, please take the time to share. Oh, thank you, Ria. Shout out to Emma. Not only is she an awesome mortgage advocate, but she is also a realtist and is a part as a board member of Women's Council. So thanks for lifting that up. And that just speaks to her passion and dedication to our community. We love you, Emma. Okay, anything else? So I want to thank you all for being a part of our Mornings with RNHS. I'm hoping that it's done what my vision was to inform you, to inspire you, to give you different nuggets and thoughts about how to support our home buyers. My goal is always to give you the best of the best, and I don't think it gets any better than the folks that were on the call today. I want to thank BMO for being an avid supporter of ours, not only with the sponsorship, but allowing me to sit on their community council, where I am in the room with many of the leaders of the bank, helping inform them as they execute their community benefits agreement through their Bank of the West merger. And then also I want to thank Ria and Ashley, being our emerging developers, taking a chance on me. Oh my God, I'm going to get emotional. Taking a chance on us and building something great. And it was one of those things, wasn't quite sure what we were doing, but I knew by selecting the two of you, you would have patience and grace with us until we got it right. And Caesar, thank you for always showing up for our housing counselors, taking the extra step. Caesar won last year. Um, our BMO actually won last year a commitment of being one of our strongest lender partners. So thank you for all the work and support that you provide us every day. So with that, thank you again for joining us. We will be putting this on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to refer back to it or share it with people in your network. Because remember, your network is your net worth. So reassess the people that you're hanging out with and the kind of conversations you're having, because it's hard work and it really does take a village. So thank you all. We'll stay on the line. I always say we know we've done our job when you drop off. But if there is anything that you would like to stay on to discuss, we're here. But again, if you've gotten what you've needed, let us know by dropping off the call, and expect the video to be uploaded to our YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. So thank you all. Appreciate your time.